Hi, everybody. I hope you are doing well tonight. Thanks, Randy. How are you? So we'll get started in a few minutes. I just want to, give everybody a chance to get started, but uh, uh, Nikki is leading by example, excuse me, which I deeply appreciate. Nikki is Nikia. I'm sorry, Nikia has shared where they're from, and they're from Detroit, Michigan, which is excellent. And asked hopes everybody is doing well. Now, what I normally ask people to do is exactly that. Share where you're from in the chat because it's always fascinating to me to see all the different places where we are coming together tonight. And so if you don't mind, take a moment. We've still got a few minutes. I'm going to wait for some people to show up. Maybe I'm going to figure out how to get myself comfortable in this new chair that I'm using. Kim is from Columbia, South Carolina. Debbie's from Carlisle. Another Kim from Buffalo. Jane from Concord. Jeff is from Rhode Island, also a fan of Detroit. Cindy is from Albany. Rebecca is from Ontario, Canada. I always have a lovely representation from Canada, which brings me joy. Brady's from Northern Virginia. Adam's from Boston. Kathy's from LA. I forgot to mention I am in New York right now. Probably will be here for a few months in New York City. Um, Annie's from Louisiana. Wendy is from Boston. Oh, hi, Wendy. Shannon's from Connecticut. And I just think it's always really interesting where we're all coming from. And I'll talk a little bit about that actually as we go through the workshop tonight. Another thing I want to remind you of is that um, sorry, another thing I want to remind you of is that once the workshop starts, once I get going, the chat is a bit distracting for me. And so, in order to do a good job on the workshop, I don't pay attention to the chat as much. But when you have questions, and I love questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A box. If you uh, you don't see the Q&A box, click on those three little dots in your Zoom bar, and then it also says more, and then you should see the Q&A box there. And if you do that, if you click on that, it'll open it up. You can see if other people have asked questions, so that's helpful. And also that's how you'll be able to ask questions. And I'll look at that and I'll pause periodically and take a look and hopefully answer your questions. We're going to be together about 50 minutes, depending upon how questions go. Um, the chat is will stay open even once I do the workshop. And I just ask, everybody be kind, curious, and respectful. The truth is, I've only had one problem in the year or so that I've been doing this, and that was last month. So hopefully that won't happen again. It was just a weird, like some guy was just like making a mess of things. It wasn't an actual attendee. So hopefully we'll have a smooth trip on this one. Sue has chimed in that she's from Massachusetts. Oh, Brian is being compassionate to me. He said he was there and that I handled it well. I did not feel like I handled it well, to be honest, but I tried to be self-compassionate with myself about it because that was part of what I was teaching. Allie's also from New York City. Nisha's from Michigan. Excellent. And then I just want to remind you tomorrow, probably sometime in the morning, I will send you a recording and a slide deck so that you don't have to worry about taking notes or anything like that if you don't want to. Len is from Jersey, Edger is here from Massachusetts. No, from Philadelphia. Hey, that's where I'm from. I was born and raised in Philly. I am a Philly guy all the way. Heidi's from Connecticut. Ruth is from North Carolina. Kirsten's from Canada as well, Ontario. Jesse's from San Antonio, Texas. So Joy, I think you asked that before I answered it. So hopefully you got that. Yep, you'll get those tomorrow. Zoe's from Jersey. Amanda's from North Carolina. Sheila's from Boston. Oh, look at that. Joy is from South Dakota. Lovely. Fiza, I think, is from New York City. Joe is in Jersey. Carol's in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Tony's in Miami. Charlene's from Montreal, also lovely, Canada. Kristen's from Texas. I wanted to do a couple quick reminders. One is, again, if you're just joining in, feel free to share where you're from in the chat. And if you have any questions, then use the Q&A feature on the uh, Zoom toolbar, which you should see on your Zoom toolbar. If you don't see it, if you go to the right-hand side where it says the three dots and more, and you click on that, you'll see a Q&A. I think it's a Q ampersand A, and then you click on that and it opens it up. You can see what questions people ask. You can ask questions that way. Those are stored, those will be stored, and then I'll answer questions periodically through the workshop. And then definitely at the end, if you have questions, go ahead. Um, the if you again, if you have questions, don't use the raise your hand feature or anything like that. Just put the questions in the Q&A feature, and I will get to them when I can. Um, Yeah, so I like to give people a few minutes, so maybe one more round of where people are. So um, Lori's from Toronto. See, I love it. I get a really good representation from Canada. Lee's from Denver. Love that place. Carrie's in Durham, North Carolina. Yumna, I think, is from Canada, Ottawa, Canada. Jean is from also Denver. Jeff says he doesn't see the three dots. So um, if you look at the toolbar where it says audio, video, participants, chat, that whole toolbar, on the right, there should be a more. To be honest, if there's not, I'm not sure where else it would be because that's the way it's always been. It may be different on a mobile device than on a laptop, which is what I'm doing. So um, let's see if anyone else has any suggestions, Jeff. Sorry about that. Um, Karen's from Jersey, Paul's from Connecticut, Ava's from Atlanta, Georgia, Bree is from Indianapolis, Dan is from the greater Boston area. So excellent. One of the reasons why I love doing this is I think it's really important, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this in the actual workshop itself, but it's really important to remember that like we're coming from different states, different cities, different countries from around the world, but we're all coming together, still trying to deal with the same issues, right? I mean, you'd think self-compassion should be such a simple thing, but it can be challenging. And to be kind to ourselves when it has been so easy for us to not be kind to ourselves for most of our lives is a challenge. And so I think it's really important to remember that in this moment, there are, I don't know how many are on the call right now. There's 70 of us or so that have come together from all these different places just to kind of figure out what we're doing together. And it's one of the things, again, I'll talk about in a moment, but I think it's really important to remember when you think about that you're struggling with this stuff by yourself, that it just feels like you're struggling with it by yourself. But there's so many of us that are out there working on similar kinds of issues. We're all trying to heal and grow from what we've been through. And so even though it feels like you're very alone, I think that the reality is that we're not actually nearly alone as we think we are. And it's one of the reasons why I like to do this. And I think it's worth that part of the introduction. Okay, now let's get to the rest of the workshop. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. If you don't know me, I'm Jeremy Schneider. I have a master's in social work and I have a master's in family therapy. I'm a certified life coach. I'm a published author. I have a column in Psychology Today, actually, where I write about AI and mental health. It's a human-centered technology column. And as you can see, I do a lot of workshops. I do coaching and counseling. I do training. I also train therapists on how to work with clients who use AI. So this month is Self-Compassion Month, but next month is AI month. And we'll be talking a lot about AI and mental health and kind of how you can use it to benefit yourself and avoid some of the risks that are involved with it. But we'll save that for another day. So I wanted to kind of give you a little quiz, right? This is excerpts from the self-compassion scale. And I think this is a really good way to just get an idea of how compassionate you are with yourself. So there's 10 questions here. You're going to rate them from one being almost never to five being almost always. There's no scoring. I promise you there isn't a right way to do this or anything. I just want to help you kind of figure out where you are in terms of being self-compassionate with yourself. So I'm going to read these aloud. I'd love for you to just either write it down or make a note for yourself. And then I'd love for you to share your responses in the chat as we're doing this. So here are some of the questions. I'm disapproving and judgmental about my own flaws and inadequacies. Second question, I try to be loving towards myself when I'm feeling emotional pain. When I fail at something important to me, I become consumed by feelings of inadequacy. When I feel inadequate in some way, I try to remind myself that feelings of inadequacy are shared by most people. I'm intolerant and impatient towards those aspects of my personality I don't like. When I'm really struggling, I tend to feel like other people must be having an easier time of it. I'm kind to myself when I'm experiencing suffering. When I see aspects of myself that I don't like, I get down on myself. I can be a bit cold-hearted towards myself when I'm experiencing suffering. When I fail at something that's important to me, I tend to feel alone in my failure. And I'd love it if just give that some thought for a moment. If you'd like to share what that was like for you, what you feel like you may have learned about yourself, go ahead and do that in the chat. If there are some answers, I will be glad to read through them. I thought it would be a good time to sort of talk to you. Let's talk about the word irony for a moment. So I've been going through a very challenging time in my life. And this week, I have, for the first time, kind of settled in a place that I can call my own, and I'll be here for about a month. I have been uh, kind of without a home for 2.5 months. So it's been a while, staying in hotels and renting places and friends' houses, and lots of stuff has been going on. I'm not trying to turn this into a therapy session or anything like that. But what I've realized is that now that I'm finally settled somewhere, my brain is kind of like, oh, I'm exhausted. I am drained. And it's been a lot harder for me to get work done this week, a lot harder for me to stay focused. And it's been this battle of like, why aren't you working? You're not getting enough done. You really need to get more done. And whoa, it's been a really tough few months. It's very possible that now that we've settled, we're kind of just like, I just need some rest. I need to be kind to myself. So it's been this practice of hearing that inner critic and responding with my inner ally, right? Saying to myself, you know what? It's been a rough time. It's okay that I'm not working as hard maybe as I was or that I should be, but I'm still getting what I need to get done. I'm still making some progress. And it's also okay that I just take time for myself. So that's kind of was as I was going through the scale, those were the things that I was thinking about. Um, it is, I mean, that's Bree points out, and I hope I'm saying your name right. Uh, Points out that their answers are subjective, that if they're struggling, their numbers will change significantly. And I think that makes so much sense, right? When I'm doing well, it's easier to be more self-compassionate. It's when we're having a hard time that's when it becomes even more important, though, of course, much more challenging to be self-compassionate with ourselves. So, uh, I thank you very much for doing that. I hope that was helpful for you in terms of kind of seeing where you're at, kind of seeing where you're at in terms of um, the self-compassion scale. A couple people have asked if I could pull up the questions again. Again, I just want to remind you, I'm going to share this whole slide deck with you tomorrow. So you'll get a copy of it if you want to look at the questions again. So I want to talk about the three components of self-compassion. I want to help make sure that you really understand what we're talking about here. Okay. So Kristen Neff is one of the pioneers of self-compassion research. She's really just created the whole field and has done an extensive amount of research on the benefits of self-compassion. And she breaks it down into three different categories. One is called self-kindness, the other is common humanity, and the other is mindful awareness. And so I want to make sure that you understand all of the components. So, self-kindness, this is kind of what you stereotypically think about when you're thinking about self-compassion. It is like our inner ally. It is when we're kind to ourselves and being caring and compassionate with ourselves. It's really about the treating ourselves the way we would treat someone that we love. So, I've used this before in other workshops. One thing that I think about a lot, I have kids, they're adults, they're 23. I have twins. And I think about would I say to them what I just said to myself? And if the answer is no, well then I don't deserve to be treated that way either. If my kids don't deserve to be treated that way, I certainly don't deserve to be treated that way either. So it's kind of just using the way that I would talk to someone else as a way to talk to myself. And so that's been helpful for me. If you don't have kids, or if you, for some reason you don't like your kids today, maybe it's a good friend, maybe it's a partner, maybe it's a parent, a sibling, right? There are people in our lives, hopefully, that we are kind and caring to. And that can be a good example of how we can be with ourselves. That's what self-kindness is. Self-kindness is, again, really about being nice to ourselves, being understanding, being supportive, being caring and compassionate. The second component is the common humanity, and it's the big reason why I like it when we share where we're from when we open up the workshop. I do that with every single workshop I do. And this is the reason. It's sometimes so hard to remember how hard it is to be human. Being human, by definition, means that we're not perfect, means that we make mistakes. So that means that we're all struggling at one time or another. And what can be really helpful is remembering nights like this, where there's a whole bunch of us that have come together to hop on a call and talk about self-compassion. And which means that we're not the only ones struggling with it, right? And if it's just us that are on the call, there are millions of people not on the call who are also probably dealing with it as well. Common humanity is really about remembering in those difficult moments, in those moments of suffering, that we're not suffering by ourselves. There are other people suffering as well. And that's not to say they're suffering in whatever country, and so I shouldn't be upset. It's not like that. It's that, yeah, there are people in Canada and all of these different states that are also suffering. And so it's probably okay that I'm suffering too. And that we're all going through something and that this will pass. We will figure out a way to get through it because that is what we do. That's kind of what common humanity is, right? We all struggle. We're just not alone in our suffering the way we often feel like we are. And then the third component is mindful awareness. And this is, when you think about kind of mindfulness meditation, things like that, this is kind of where that comes in. And tomorrow, when I send you the recording and the slide deck, I have a free guide that it's called something like the no pressure guide to getting started with mindfulness meditation, because there shouldn't be any pressure about mindfulness meditation. And so it just has some resources and some ideas for you to get into it if that's something that you're interested in. But what I'm talking about here is really kind of being aware of your suffering, not drowning in your suffering. And that's the key, right? We want to notice, oh, this is a difficult moment, not I'm drowning, I'm never going to survive, but this is a difficult moment. This is hard. I can feel that. That's okay. I'm going to be able to get through this. I notice my suffering. I'm aware of it. This is what I'm going to do to care for myself, take care of myself, be kind to myself. Essentially respond with compassion instead of judgment or criticism. And that's kind of what mindful awareness can do. And a good way of thinking about that is the difference between kind of standing in a river where the current is kind of knocking you around, whatever this motion is, right? Knocking you around. And the difference between standing in the river when that current is hitting us and standing on the banks of the river and noticing the chaos going on, noticing these thoughts and feelings swirling, but not being overwhelmed by them, not drowning in them. And that's kind of what mindful awareness can do for you. So I want to talk a little bit about common myths of self-compassion because I do think this is something that stands in the way of people trying it themselves. And so I want to talk about four key ones that have come up a lot. Myth, it lowers my standards or makes me complacent. So this is the idea that if I don't, if I'm not hard on myself, if I'm not pushing myself relentlessly, I'm just gonna not care and not do stuff. And one, I think that's just sort of a myth in general, right? That the only way to succeed is if we are driving ourselves unfairly. But in reality, the research consistently shows that self-compassionate individuals are more motivated to learn from their mistakes. Because what happens is when you make a mistake and are self-compassionate about it, it's easier. You're like, oh yeah, no, I tried this new thing, it didn't work out, but I think I know what I could do next time to do it better. And then you do it the next time better because you didn't spend time beating yourself up and feeling like you were a failure and thinking that you'll never get it right again, right? You were like, oh, I failed, that sucked, but I think I know what to do next time. Or I failed, that was tough. Okay, I'm going to try it again and I'm going to see how I do that time. What self-compassion does, which I think is fantastic and really one of the just like keys to success in life, is resilience. It helps build resilience. It's not that it makes us get comfortable with failing. It's that it helps us remember that failing is just a part of the learning process. And so the more we fail and learn, the better we're going to get. Another myth is that self-compassion is a weakness. And so this is again, it's like if we baby ourselves, we're just never going to succeed, right? And I think what people forget is it's not letting ourselves off the hook and saying it doesn't matter. It's just being kind to ourselves about it. So let's say I do this workshop and it turns out that I completely screw up, which hopefully I won't. But if I do, let's say I completely screw up, right? I can really get down on myself about it. I can respond with harshness and judgment and shame, right? Or I can say, ah, I mean that sucked. I really wish I hadn't made that mistake, or I really wish I had done better. Okay, I'm gonna face that. This is what I did. This is the mistake I made. How do I go about trying to fix it? How do I remedy that? How do I repair a rift that I've had in our relationship or with someone specific or whatever it is? And then how do I move forward, right? That takes courage to face what we've struggled with versus just getting down on ourselves about it and then not trying to do anything to make it better. Three, and this is a huge one, self-compassion. There's a myth that self-compassion is selfish. And yes, it does have the word self in it, but it does not mean that it is selfish by any stretch of the imagination. And there's some really good research that talks about how people who are self-compassionate are actually more giving and more supportive in relationships. And that's because we keep feeding ourselves. The act of being self-compassionate re-energizes us. It gives us fuel in order to be able to keep going. It's that harshness and judgment and criticism that really weighs us down, that can burn us out, that can just drain us completely. Self-compassion allows us to really build back up our energy level, build back up our resilience, right? And be able to then support other people in a different way. So, particularly if you're a parent or you're caretaking for one of your parents or family member, being self-compassionate is really crucial and, in fact, will help you do better as a parent and caretaker. The final myth I'll talk about is that it's just feeling sorry for myself. And again, this is like this idea that somehow being understanding of ourselves, being kind to ourselves, saying it'll be okay is just pity, is just feeling sorry for ourselves. And again, really what we're talking about is not dwelling in the fact that something went wrong, not dwelling in victimhood, not dwelling in our failure, but looking at that failure, looking at that mistake, looking at that thing that we struggled with, and saying, ugh, I wish I hadn't done that. What can I do now to care for myself, to try and resolve whatever happened, to try and do it better next time? That's a large part of what self-compassion is. And I think it's important to remember that with self-compassion, there's an element of accountability. And I think that's the part that a lot of people miss. It's not, oh, I hurt this person I care about's feelings, but whatever, I'm being self-compassionate. It's fine. Like, no, I hurt this person's feelings. Self-compassion is that's not the way that I am. I'm not that kind of person, but I made a mistake. What can I do to help myself? What can I do to repair this relationship with that person? And what can I do to learn from this so that I don't do it again next time? That's compassion. There is an accountability built into it. And I think that's what a lot of people miss about it. I want to just touch on the research real quick that Kristen Neff has done. And again, I will make sure I will try to remember to link to her website tomorrow. She's got a really good website. There's a lot of detail on the research there. So she's been doing research on self-compassion for about 20 years already. So there's dozens of studies. This is like a rich research resource. People who practice self-compassion tend to have lower anxiety and depression. They tend to have greater life satisfaction. It reduces the PTSD risks associated with various types of trauma. It enhances emotional resilience, and we touched on that a little bit. You can see kind of directly how that happens. And it helps promote healthier lifestyle behaviors. In a lot of ways, and this is kind of why I teach both of these so much, self-awareness and self-compassion are the biggest skills that you can learn in your healing and growth process. So a lot of people think about self-compassion. You've got those three parts, but there's also two different types of self-compassion. And a lot of people think of it as primarily just this one thing. What Kristen Neff understands, I mean, explains as tender self-compassion. But she talks about both tender and fierce self-compassion. And so let's talk about that for a moment, because I think that's really important. Tender self-compassion is exactly what it sounds like. It is the sort of more stereotypical way of thinking about self-compassion. It's when we're understanding, caring, kind, patient with ourselves, with our suffering, right? We find ways to help self-soothe ourselves. We comfort ourselves. We accept ourselves for who we are. We figure out what we need to do and go on from there. Fierce self-compassion is something that people don't really think about, but is an important component. And it's literally, this is how she describes it. It's like a mama bear, a strong, courageous force that fights for your well-being. Now, what this is really about is this is about setting boundaries. This is about saying no to people when they want our time for things that we don't actually want to do. It's about setting boundaries with people that we feel are risky. And it's also about motivating positive change. And I just want to take a time out for a moment because I think 2 days ago, as I was like preparing for this, I saw a clip on Instagram of a bear kind of shooing her babies up into a tree. And she was really kind about it. And she just shooed them up in a tree. And you're like, okay, that's cool. And then she turns, races, and confronts this other bear that clearly had encroached on her territory. And it was like, this is the perfect example of both tender and fierce self-compassion at the same time. And it's funny that Kristen Neff refers to it as like the mama bear kind of approach, because that's exactly what it's like. I wanted to pause here for a second. There are a couple of questions. So someone wanted me to touch on the accountability aspect a little bit more. And I think what's really important to remember is a lot of people think self-compassion is a way of letting yourself off the hook, right? I let's say I say something to my daughter that offends her. Well, letting myself off the hook is saying, well, she knows that I love her. It's fine, whatever, right? That's not self-compassion, though. Self-compassion is, oh, I, I, I said something I shouldn't have, and I hurt my daughter, and I hate that. That really sucks. I'm really upset about that. And acknowledging that moment of suffering, being in that moment of suffering, not saying that I'm a terrible dad, not blaming myself for how she's turned out or anything like that, right? Like it's understanding what happened. It's being compassionate with myself about the fact that I made a mistake. I'm allowed to make a mistake. Maybe it's providing context within that mistake. It's been a difficult stretch for me. Maybe I just said something out of turn that I shouldn't have. But part of that process is still an accountability, is still saying, yes, but I did something that hurt her, and I need to make amends for that. So I need to talk to her and say, hey, I'm really sorry I said this. I was out of line. I did not mean that, or whatever it is to repair that, right? To me, that's the accountability piece that is inherent in real good self-compassion. And then another question that came up is, can self-compassion become selfish? I mean, I think technically it can, but I don't think it's then self-compassion anymore. I think it's then just being selfish. So as long as you kind of understand the framework of what self-compassion is, it won't become selfish. I hope that answers that question. I wanted to talk for a minute about self-compassion and motivation because I think that's a really interesting cycle that a lot of people don't think about, right? So in the self-criticism cycle, it basically follows this process, and I think we've all been there. We make a mistake, we fail something, we self-berate. That inner critic pops up, tells us we're an idiot or we screwed up or whatever it is. And then we feel demoralized. And then trying it again is harder because we're already kind of beaten down. And so sometimes we may give up or we avoid trying, or we wait an extended period of time until we kind of recover from this self-criticism cycle. But when we think about self-compassion in terms of that cycle, yeah, we still make the same mistake. We fail at something, but we self-forgive. We're understanding about the context in which we struggled. We figure out what we need in that scenario. We learn from our experiences. And then it's easier to try again with this improved approach because we haven't been beaten down. We are not carrying additional weight of that we're a failure and that we suck and that we whatever, right? And so this self-compassion cycle, particularly around motivation, is actually really powerful. And another reason why I think it's really worth considering really implementing self-compassion into your life. And the research actually supports this, right? People that have stronger self-compassion practices have stronger personal standards and work just as hard or harder towards their goals. And the difference is that instead of having this deep feel of fear of failure because of what happens if we fail and what it might mean about us, we have this desire for growth and we're willing to try things even if we might fail because we'll be able to handle it and try again. So I wanted to give some examples of what self-compassion sounds like. Sorry, before I do that, someone asked, what about medical issues that you blame yourself for, falls, accident? I mean, that's a great example. I'll give you an example from my life. Uh, when we were in quarantine, COVID was really bad. I got COVID and I got terrible vertigo. And I fell because I was so dizzy. I fell and I landed on my ankle and I broke my ankle. And I spent 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it was, recovering, rehab, all of that. And for a while, I really was beating myself up over that because it was like, I fell. This is my fault. But I didn't, that this was before I really understood the value of self-compassion. So hopefully now I wouldn't do this. But what it really took was for me to kind of realize this context. I didn't do this to myself. I got sick. I got something called vertigo, which is basically makes it very difficult to stand up without falling down. And I fell down. And unfortunately, just the way that I fell, I landed on my ankle and broke it. I tried to be really understanding about that. And what I focused on was then just working to get myself better. And I think, that's a limited example. There are lots of kind of medical scenarios where maybe you're not going to be able to just get better in a couple months, but I think the same practice still applies. There's just nothing that we're doing to ourselves that we deserve to suffer for. And I think fundamentally, that's the thing about self-compassion. Whatever we did, we don't deserve punishment for that. So this person followed up, what if it was preventable, but a bad choice has caused it? And it's like, yeah, right. Like, let's say I broke my hand because I punched a wall, right? That is a bad choice and one that I would deal with for, right, 6 to 8 weeks while I'm in a cast and healing my wrist and finger, right? Whatever that is. I can choose to just beat myself up over that, over the fact that I made a mistake. But I think the other options are to be like, okay, maybe I wasn't in as good mental shape as I thought it was. Maybe I was just having a really bad day. Maybe I got really bad news. Whatever it was, could I have handled it better? Sure. Would I like to learn how to handle that better? Definitely. Do I want to do that again, as in break my hand? No. But this is where I'm at. I've broken my hand now. What do I do to care for myself? I acknowledge I made a mistake. What do I do to care for myself? How do I essentially repair this, which is, wearing the cast, doing the rehab, all of that kind of stuff. And so the fundamental aspect of self-compassion is that we don't deserve to be punished. As human beings, we don't deserve to be punished. We don't deserve to suffer. And so whatever you did, I don't think you deserve to be punished on top of that. That is how I think about this and why I think self-compassion is so important. Someone else was asking, can self-compassion change how we deal with failure, what we can't control? Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great way of thinking about that. So that, right, if you blame yourself for someone else's actions, right, that's something that you can really think about, right? That is, again, it's kind of fundamentally challenging. We don't have control over other people's actions. We only have control over ourselves. Sometimes we can do things that influence how other people feel about us, but oftentimes it's out of our control. Being self-compassionate with ourselves about that process and experience can help us during that moment and also help after some sort of connection ends. So I think that's important to remember. So let's get back to what self-compassion sounds like. So I gave some examples of what like the inner critic voice sounds like and what a self-compassion or like inner ally voice would sound like. So inner critic voice, oh, you're such an idiot. I can't believe you screwed this up. And an inner ally voice would be, that sucks, but it's okay. We'll figure this out. What can we do about it now? Inner critic, I should be further along by now. Inner ally, I'm growing at my own pace, and that's okay. Inner critic, I'm so behind, I'll never catch up. Inner ally, progress isn't always visible, but I'm moving. I'm making progress. I have one of my favorite songs is it talks about growth, and it's like it's on diagonal, but it's always going up, right? So sometimes when things are on diagonal, you can't always tell how fast they're moving up, but they're still moving up. That's something to kind of remember in these moments. Inner critic is like something like I have to earn my worth. And inner ally is I was born worthy. Nothing can change that. And so one of the things that I'm going to talk about is I'm doing a coaching intensive in 3 weeks on self-compassion. And this is one of the things that we'll really be focusing on is how to take the inner critic, quiet that a little bit, and turn up the volume on your inner ally. So I wanted to take a moment and just sort of see if we could do a little practice together, give you some things to think about when you're trying to do self-compassion on your own. So there's three simple elements. This is a moment of suffering. So this is that mindfulness piece, acknowledging your pain without judgment, acknowledging your pain without drowning in it, right? This is a moment of suffering. I've been, right, this past few months have been really difficult. There were many moments where I thought to myself, this is a moment of suffering. This moment of suffering will pass. I just need to get through this moment. Suffering is a part of life. That's not because we deserve it. It's not because there's something wrong with it. But as humans, there is suffering. And as humans, we are not suffering alone. We are not the only ones suffering. There are millions of us going through very similar challenges, trying to figure out how to get through it. This is that common humanity element. So this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. And then, may I be kind to myself. This is the self-kindness part. May I be kind to myself. What do I need right now to care for myself? So a big piece of self-compassion, and this is a more complicated thing than we have time to talk about, but I talk a lot about self-awareness, self-compassion, and self-care in so much of what I do, because that kind of trifecta is everything you need to really heal and grow in life. Self-awareness, it's being aware that your inner critic is making a sound, for instance, that your inner critic is roaring at you, right? Self-compassion is being able to respond with your inner ally, to be supportive and understanding and caring. And self-care is, okay, I am in this moment of suffering. How do I help myself? What can I do to feel better? What can I do to care for myself? So tomorrow I will also include, I have a free self-care guide, so I'll include a link to that as well. There's lots of articles I've written about it if you want to go explore that too. But this is your self-compassion break practice. You can do this multiple times a day, whenever you remember, maybe something you do in the morning and in the evening, when you have a break during the day. But it's just, this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself. That's really your goal for the next week or two, is to try and do this during the day. Something else that you could practice. So I want you to kind of pick something that you do on a regular basis, because it's easier to start a new habit when we attach it to another habit we're already doing. So for instance, when you start your commute, or when you're brushing your teeth, or when you have your first coffee, or you have breakfast, or whatever it is around meals, whatever you would like, pick a moment and just notice what's going on. Which voice is talking right now? Is it the inner critic or is it the inner ally? The goal here is not to start a major life change yet. The goal is just noticing. This is that self-awareness piece, because the key is, without awareness, we can't change anything about what we're doing. We first have to be aware of it in order for us to then be able to say, ah, I see that. I see what's happening there. Or I hear the inner critic. Now that I'm actually aware of it, then let's figure out what I can do to deal with that. But first, just start with the noticing. Build that self-awareness. And again, there's no judgment here. This is just observation. And if you don't do this every day, what am I going to tell you? Be compassionate about it with yourself, right? Don't beat yourself up because you're not doing the daily self-compassion practice. That's just not how I roll. That's not what I want for you. So I want to kind of tell you what the next step is. And so there's this theory, right? This talking about what we've been doing, right? Talking about self-compassion. And then there's the real practice of it. I'll be doing this coaching intensive from inner critic to inner ally in 3 weeks. It's a small group setting and we'll actually work with your inner critic. You'll bring examples and we'll work on them together. There'll be a little bit of teaching, but it'll primarily be a chance for us to practice things together. I want to get you used to noticing it, your inner critic. I want you to get used to how you like what I call quarantine it, and then how you respond with the inner ally. And we'll practice that together. We'll come up with different things that your inner ally can say, and we'll practice kind of turning the volume up on that. So again, that's something that we'll be doing in 3 weeks. It's August 27th. It's again called From Inner Critic to Inner Ally. There's limited spots. So I think there's a max of 15 that I've set. There's already maybe 4 or 5 people that have signed up. So if you'd like to join, you can go to jgs.net/intensive, or you could just go to Meetup. It's also in Meetup. And again, I'll send you this slide deck tomorrow so you can, uh, have this link if you'd like. And then I just thank you so much for doing this. There are a few more questions that I'm going to answer. But if you'd liked my workshop, I really hope you'll take a moment and rate and review it because I find that it makes it easier for other people to find these workshops as well. And I like doing them and I'd like to help as many people as I can. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the other questions. Um, So someone talks about just the challenges about intimacy issues, and I think right we these things that we learn as kids in terms of whether it's okay to say I love you to someone, what kind of risk is involved, can be really challenging. And so self-compassion can be a great way of healing some of these wounds that we have. It's one of the other components of self-compassion that I didn't really talk about, but I really love, which is, and I didn't expect to be honest, but as I practiced self-compassion, I found that what I was doing was treating myself the way that I always wish my caretakers had done for me. And doing it for myself was healing if in its own way. And I think that's something really important to think about. Practicing self-compassion can be healing for yourselves. And that is what I want, right? I want that for me. I want that for you. We all deserve some real good healing. Um, Rebecca mentions, I strongly believe that the reason why we tend to criticize ourselves is because of how our parents raised us. So I think, Rebecca, that's an excellent point. We do a lot of things because that's what we learn to do. Also, we do these things in the absence of, say, being modeled on how to be self-compassionate, right? Most of our parents probably weren't self-compassionate, so we didn't learn that from them. So we didn't learn how to do it, right? But I think you're right. There is this, like, there's certainly situations where our parents were mean to us, were criticized us kind of relentlessly, and we internalize that. I think there's also just sometimes where they didn't know how to be self-compassionate, so we didn't see that. And so we just kind of learned to deal with it on our own, and we learned to internalize this kind of pressure and judgment and harshness that so many of us have inside our heads. Uh, so someone asked if they sign up for the workshop on the 27th and they have to cancel, um, then just reach out to me. I don't think I have another one. So I'll be doing coaching intensives every month, like for the rest of the year, but they'll be focused on, right, like there'll be AI and mental health. It's kind of called the rehearsal room, which is a way to use AI to practice some of the challenges we might have in relationships, which is a pretty fun topic, to be honest. Um, I think in October, I'm doing internal family systems. So we'll be talking about parts. So the coaching intensive is about that. Uh, November is cognitive behavioral therapy and like cognitive management. And then December is self-care, particularly around self-care around the holidays. So, Brian, if you sign up and you have to cancel, you just let me know and we'll figure something out. Do I have any reading recommendations? So, I will include Kristen Neff's website, and she has a really good book on self-compassion. That would be probably a really good place to start. Um, Joy asked, are there workshops in Eventbrite too? I stopped putting my workshops in Eventbrite just because it just wasn't really making much progress for me. I have it's it's stunning to me, but there's like almost 11,000 people in this community on Meetup, and so I just stay with this community. Um, and someone brought up about like struggling to appreciate like feeling like they don't deserve things. And so I think the practice of self-compassion can help remind us that we do deserve good things. Because part of not deserving good things is this perspective that we should be punished, that we are not worthy. And self-compassion is constantly reminding ourselves we are worthy, we are valued, we are important, and we deserve good things. And I would say you've been through enough. Whatever it is in your life, you've been through enough. You deserve good things. And so self-compassion is one of those ways to really help kind of instill that. Again, it's not you're not going to be able to like switch it on tomorrow, but it is something that you can continually practice and get better at and slowly really begin to heal yourself from a lot of the wounds that maybe you haven't had a chance to work on before. That was definitely my experience. I've done a lot of work on myself, a ton, like decades, but self-compassion was a real big game changer for me in terms of like healing and growth, not just sort of kind of undoing what was done, but really moving forward in my life. And so it's one of the reasons why I love doing this self-compassion workshop. So I think that's all the questions for today. If there's anything else that pops up, just let me know. Again, I will email you um, the slide deck. I will email you the recording of today's workshop. I will also email you, if I remember correctly, the mindfulness meditation free guide, the self-care free guide, uh, Kristen Neff's website where you can get her book, which is worth reading, and anything else that I can think of between now and then. Again, if you join for this free workshop, and this is all you want from me, that's totally fine. I'll be doing free workshops every month, the first week of the month for the rest of the year. If you'd like to go further with self-compassion, I do hope you'll join my coaching intensive in 3 weeks. But either way, thank you so much for being here tonight. I really enjoyed talking to you and going through this with you. I love self-compassion. I think it is just a way to really take care of yourselves in a way that we're just never taught to do when we were younger. So, thank you all very much. And you'll hear from me tomorrow morning, one way or the other. Okay. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.